At 5, most children, actually all children are required, no, 6, all children are required to be in school, either public or private school. And now parents have the option of doing homeschool. Have you guys heard about homeschool?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're a parent, you actually, the law says you have to send your kids to school, but you can request permission from the government to homeschool your child. So that is an option, but officially everybody's in school from it's age 6 until 16 is what we call compulsory required education in the United States. But most kids start before 6 and most people go beyond 16. But 6 to 16 is compulsory.
Compulsory.
So I'm going to have to put that down here. 6 to 16. Oh, am I supposed to spell it? Let me check. My spelling. Charlotte, you already know I'm doing it right. Compulsory. There it is. Compulsory. I did it right. Compulsory education. So it's required. Wow. So the other thing that's interesting about education in America is education is regulated by the states, by each state.
By each state.
So the rules, the laws are different in each state. How many states do we have? 50. Plus, we have the city of Washington, D.C., which is not a state, it's like a special district. Plus, we have Puerto Rico, Guam, the
Alaska.
Virgin Islands, Alaska's a state.
Yeah.
So there's like 50 governments that are officially states, and then there's like at least 5 that are like special. So they're territories or District of Columbia. So each of these states or territories is in charge of education in their state. So the rules are different. So the qualifications for being a teacher are different. So I might have my teaching license, my credential to teach in California, and then I move to Arizona. Now I have to get it again. I mean, usually I can take it and send it to the state and they'll verify, oh, it's the same. But sometimes not. I might have to take another class. So, and that's true for like nursing, you're licensed to be a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer. You get it in one state, and then you have to make sure you have to apply in another state for them to accept it. Is that really strange? Is that different from your countries?
No.
The same in your countries?
No.
No.
So education in China, is each province have its own education?
No.
It's national.
Yeah.
It's national. Colombia?
Yeah,
National, yeah. So it's confusing. It means there's like a lot of different laws, and then the federal government in the US, they do give some money for education. Most of the money is from the states or even smaller local, but they do give some money. And sometimes when they give the money, they attach their own regulations, their own rules to it. So like if you get federal money, you can't just, driver's license is different in each state. I mean, it's valid. If I drive across the border into Arizona, they will recognize my California license.
But in China, they're the same. So when people don't want to have the license in Guangdong province, because from the province, the license is really hard to get. So people in the college, they get a driver's license in the college.
Where they go to college, it's easier, yeah.
Easier.
But the rule here is when you move to another state, like if I move to Arizona, within 10 days. Well, I don't know about Arizona. In California, you're supposed to go and get your license here.
Oh.
Yeah, you're not supposed to, like if you're just visiting for a month, you don't have to. But if you move here with the intention to move here, you're supposed to change that right away. You have to register to vote. Because there's, I mean, it's crazy. It really is like, I don't think we need it now. I mean, like, I don't think we need to have so many separate levels and so many separate rules. I think it creates a lot of extra bureaucracy, right? Bureaucracy is like government agencies, government workers, like it's just for us as everyday people, it's like, I gotta go do all this paperwork again. You know what I mean? Like,
Nobody wants to move.
if you're qualified by being a nurse, I should be allowed to be a nurse everywhere. Let's just set a national standard to be a nurse or a teacher or whatever. Anyway, you know, nobody asked my opinion. President Trump, he's not calling me. Hey, Professor Corey, what do you think? Nobody asked me.
He should call you
Okay.
and ask you.
But I do vote. So education at this point is compulsory. But let's go back to the babies, the little kids, the young kids. So when children are little, 0 to 5, we talk about this as early childhood education. Early childhood education is the official title. And usually the first people that take care of the kids are the parents, right? Mom and dad. And then often grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, friends, they will often help with childcare, right? So if you're having your baby and your mom or your dad or your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, they live nearby, you're like, yay, here's the baby, I'm going back to work, right? Maybe after a few months. So that's usually for free. Sometimes you'll pay those people, you know, so, but usually for free. Okay, let's say you don't have family or your family members are busy working or they don't actually like babies, they don't want to be a babysitter, then you need to find a child care provider, a caregiver. So you'll hear both, child care provider, you'll also hear caregiver. Caregiver can also refer to people that take care of elderly people or disabled people, seniors or disabled people. So you have, if someone says, oh, I'm a caregiver, my first thought is that it's for a senior or a disabled person. I wouldn't think this. But if you say I'm a child care provider, that's obviously clear. So any person who's paid to take care of children. So some people might work in a child care center or a school. So often, and again, the different job titles, each school can have its own job title. But usually if it says instructional aid for early childhood, usually you don't need a permit. A permit is like a license, credential, certificate. So again, every certificate, every occupation, not every, but the occupations use different words, right? So for teachers in K-12, they have a teaching credential. For certified nursing assistants, they have they're certificated, they have a certificate. If I want to be a plumber or an electrician, I have a license. For cosmetology, the hair cutters, I think it's called a license. For preschool teachers, it's called a permit. And again, this is in California, but once you get to kindergarten and higher, it's a credential. I don't know why. I don't know who made these up, okay? But if you're interested in like Carol, right, interested in being a preschool teacher, you need to know the word permit. And to get a permit, you have to take classes in early childhood education or child development. So the first level of permit that you get for like a teaching assistant, you have to usually have at least 6 units, which is 2 classes. Some schools require 12 units or 4 classes, okay? So the very first permit, it's usually 6 to 12 units, which means 2 to 4 classes. Abby, hope everything is okay. I set you up on the computer here to start adding more people to the database. So I'm making a database of all Vessel students from the past like 5 years, from the emails that people put on there when they started with me. So some of the emails are like old, but we're having this picnic. Who's coming to the picnic? I know Charlotte's coming. Anyone else coming?
I don't know.
Yay!
I don't know yet.
You haven't made a decision. Oh, it's going to be so fun. Let's twist Viola's arm. We're going to breathe down her neck. Oh, this wasn't a group. We didn't do that. So when you twist someone's arm, you pressure them a little to do it. We're going to pressure you. It's going to be fun. It's just a couple hours. It's nearby. Just stop in. So if you know you're going, you can, I'll send the link again. You can just click the link to RSVP. You don't have to say no, but if you want to go, say yes. Or you can just show up. Even if you don't ever RSVP, you can just appear and we'll be happy to see you. Well, Sandra, we're so happy to see you. Okay. Okay. So where were we? Assistant teachers, you need a permit, and then teachers need to be officially a teacher. You also need a permit. There's also like a director, right? A preschool director. You also need a permit. Carol, if you're going to do your research report on this, you can tell us more. Okay, Carol's going to give us more information. Okay, so some work in child care center or preschool, some work in the child's home, like a babysitter, right? You go to the person's house and you take care of the baby. You'll hear 3 words. Mostly you'll hear babysitter, and then sometimes you'll hear nanny, and very rarely, occasionally, you'll hear au pair. So, what's the difference? Generally, we use babysitter for people that are part-time, so 1 to 20 hours a week. So maybe just Saturday night, the parents want to go out to dinner, you pay the babysitter. Maybe it's in the afternoons or just in the mornings, right? There's maybe one of the parents only works part-time, or they both work part-time. They only need a little bit of childcare. Sometimes it's just as needed. So like my daughter, maybe once or twice a month will babysit for the next door neighbor. If someone says I'm a nanny, my understanding would be that that's a bigger time commitment, right? That it's probably at least 20 hours a week, maybe as many as 50 hours a week, right? I need to hire a nanny. It's more time. But like the 20 hours, you'll see somebody who works 20 hours a week, they might describe themselves, I'm a babysitter. Even if you worked 30 or 40, you could still describe yourself, I'm a babysitter. This isn't a big rule. It's just normally, if someone says it, what's in my head. So you could say I'm a babysitter and you work full time. But usually, if you're working for one family 40 hours a week, usually you would say I'm a nanny. Okay. Usually the nanny has her own house and she just goes to the other family, she works, finishes, goes home, right? That's her job, or his job. We'll talk about that. Sometimes people have a live-in nanny. They hire someone who, this is like really rich people, okay? Really rich people. They hire someone to live in their house and take care of the kids, a live-in nanny, okay? So traditionally, right, almost always these jobs were women. Now there's more men, right? Men that do this, not very many, but there are some men. And so sometimes you'll hear this word, he's a manny. You don't need to say he's a manny, okay? But anyway, babysitter. Really a babysitter. So you could hear babysitter, you could hear nanny. They're pretty much the same job. If I hear nanny, I think more hours. That's it. Same job. If I hear manny, I assume it's a man and not a woman. if I hear nanny, I try not to assume that it's a woman. We have all of us, right? We have a really bad habit. Like if somebody says the babysitter, I think woman. If somebody says the doctor, the manager, we still, despite the fact there's so many women doctors, we still think, what did he say? I went to the doctor, what did he say? Well, she said, right? But we have this idea in our heads, so we have to try to change that, right? To make it so that we all, for any occupation, we're able to imagine in our minds, men or women. Okay, and then the au pair is a very specific job it's basically a nanny, and the person lives in the kids, right? The kids' home, and comes from another country. So when someone says, oh, I hired an au pair for my kids, it means they're from a different country. So if you're in England and you have an au pair, they could be from France or Japan or Colombia. If you're in Colombia and you have an au pair, they're from anywhere outside of Colombia. So it's outside of your own country. And the whole point of this experience is that there's this cultural exchange. Like, won't that be fun? My kid will get to meet somebody from Japan and learn a little bit about Japan and maybe learn a little Japanese. And the Japanese, they're usually like college age, you know, maybe before they go to college or right after college or even during college, they take a year and they do this experience. I've had over the years, especially in my childcare class, but even in this class and healthcare, I've had almost every year I have at least one au pair. And I don't have anybody this year. But, so the idea is like they get paid, right, but they also get this cultural experience. Have you guys heard of this before?
No.
Yes, I
have
two friends.
You had some friends that did it?
Yeah.
I have two classmates before.
Like 2 classmates, yeah, who did it. So it's generally a good experience. Sometimes, you know, if there's like a person, they're not compatible. Remember the word compatible? Like personality-wise, they're not compatible. Maybe the au pair is very messy or not always like on time, or maybe the parents are really strict, or, you know, sometimes it's not a good match, the personalities, but generally it's a good experience. Okay. And then some people, like, I'm gonna stay in my home. I like kids, but I wanna take care of them in my home, not the child's home. You actually need a license to do that. You can't just say, you know, oh, Sarah, you can drop your baby off at my house, and you can drop your 1-year-old off at my house, and who else has little kids? Robert has a 1-year-old. Anyone else, little kids? You wanna come to my daycare? So bring your kids to my daycare. We'll sing songs. I know a lot of songs. I can't do that without a license. It makes sense, right? Because how do you know if my home is safe? Right? How do you know if I'm not a criminal? I'm gonna kidnap your child or whatever. I mean, it's just, you want the state, you want somebody to say, this is a safe place for your child. You're qualified, yeah.
Is it difficult?
No. Kind of unfortunately, it's not. I mean, it's fortunate if you're a good provider. It's not difficult to get it at all, actually. They have 2 different levels. One level is the small in-home family child care, and then the other one is large. So the small one, your maximum is 4 kids, the large is 8. I think if you have 8, you need to hire a second person. You're not allowed to have 8 by yourself. And even with 4, you can't have 4 infants. There's a lot of rules about the ratio, the number of adults to the number of children, right? So depending on the age of the kids. But they do come, they inspect your house. You have to take a few classes, but not very many. You have to have like CPR, first aid, some of that kind of stuff. It's actually not hard to do, and there is a big demand for this. So, you know, if it's something like you really love kids, but you have to be like, most of them, parents want the ability to drop their kids off like all day. So you have to be willing to like be home in your house from like 7 or 8 in the morning till 5 or 6 tonight with small children. So you really have to love kids. But you know, if you have 8 kids, you can make some money doing it because it's your house. So you don't have to pay like rent to rent a facility, you know, so there's some advantages to that. Yeah, it could depend on the age, maybe if they're a little bit older or whatever. So it's just, it's not a bad option if you like kids, if you have it doesn't have to be a huge space, but if you have some space in your house, you have a little outside space, whatever, it's not a bad option. Okay, so these are the people and what we call them. So they're all providers, but they might also have another name like aide or teacher. And then the place where it could happen at the child's home, at the child care provider's home, a licensed child care center. So just like if I want kids in my home, I need a license. If I want to rent a space or buy a commercial building, I also need to have a license to have children there. Someone has to come and make sure that's safe for children and make sure I'm responsible. And sometimes they're for just 0 to 3, and then after that it would be called really a child care center. Sometimes they're for 0 to 5. We tend to make a distinction like 0 to 2 or 0 to 3 it would be like a child care, he's in child care. Once they get to age 2 or 3, we start calling it preschool. And sometimes you'll hear the word nursery school. Has anyone heard nursery school? No, it's a little bit, Mia's heard it. It's a little bit older word. Like when I was young, we called it nursery school. And there's still some schools, the title of the school is nursery school. It's a preschool, it's a preschool. And there's not rules about like, oh, if the kids go to 5, it has to be called a preschool. There's no rules like that, okay? So you can call it child care center. I could have 0 to 5 and say, this is a preschool. It's just a word, does that make sense? The license is to you know, you get a license for a childcare center and then you can call it what you want. Okay, then sometimes, so these are all like special childcare center fees, right, or the children's home. Sometimes a regular K-12 school, we're gonna start talking about K-12 schools. Sometimes a school, it used to start in kindergarten, now they've added, the elementary schools added a pre-K class, okay, for 4-year-olds, sometimes even 3-year-olds. So sometimes either a public or private school has a pre-K. And the kids would then go to pre-K and then kindergarten, first, second in the same school. This is becoming more popular, more common. And then also we do consider it not early ed, but child care when you go to an after-school program at your school, right? This is all considered, they call it after-school care or before-school care, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they have it from 7:30 until 9 in the morning. Some people have to leave for work.
Yes.
The school doesn't start till 8, but I have to drive an hour to my job. What am I gonna do?
Yes.
So they have before school or after school care. Or before school. Okay. When we talk about, when we hear this public and private, what does that mean? So in England, it means something totally different. It's like the opposite or something. The private or through the government. I don't know, it like always confuses me because it's so different in England. But here in the States, if a school is public, what does that mean?
You don't need to
They
pay.
don't pay.
Government money. It's pretty much, maybe not 100%, because sometimes they ask the parents to donate money or they get a little bit of private money. But it's almost all paid for by government money, and it's free, okay? So that's the big distinction for, especially K-12, and it's free. Private means mostly not government money. There could be a little bit, right? Some private schools could qualify for some money from the government for certain programs, okay? Mostly not government money, and it's not free. It's not free. Parents pay. There are some schools, I'm thinking like Families Forward, where you guys volunteered. It's not public. It is private, but it's a private, non-profit school. Okay, so that is important to understand the difference, that there's some private schools that are for-profit and there's some that are non-profit. There's a lot of private schools, even when the parents are paying a lot of money, a lot of private schools,
For themselves, like non-profit.
they are non-profit. Yeah, I mean, it just means they're using that money to, like, you know, pay their teachers and directors and maybe make the buildings more beautiful and programs. They can use the money to take the kids to Washington DC for a field trip. You know what I mean? So long as they're using the money on educational purposes, they can be called a nonprofit. So really, both of these, even if it's a private nonprofit, the parents might pay, maybe not as much, right? So it is interesting when we say private, it doesn't mean that it's always for profit. And when we start talking about colleges and universities, almost all of those, even when they're private, are nonprofit, okay? So it could be private nonprofit or private for profit. Okay, so this is true of preschools, it's true of elementary schools, high schools, colleges. There's really 3 things they could be: public, private for-profit, and private nonprofit. And the most common would be public, most common form of schools. And then private nonprofit would be the second most common, right? Second most common. And then private for-profit Abby, can I ask you a question about that? Would be the least common in any level of school, private or profit, least common. Okay. If you guys want to flip the page, take a minute just to read this while I talk to Abby. Okay. I mean, you could say compulsory education. Most people don't talk about it that way. They just say K-12.
K-12.
You know, like, oh, I'm a teacher. What do you teach? I'm a K-12. I'm not a K-12 teacher. I'm an adult ed teacher, right? So we sometimes in other countries, especially, you'll hear primary and secondary. You don't hear it as much in the U.S., but it still applies, right? Primary school would be about kindergarten through 5th, sometimes K-6. Some schools go kindergarten through 6th. And then secondary would be 6th through 12th. And this is grades, 6th through 12th grades, okay? In elementary school, usually most schools now, they're not called primary school here, they're called elementary school. Pronunciation, elementary.
Elementary.
My daughter goes to elementary
Elementary school.
I want to be an elementary school teacher.
Elementary school teacher. Elementary.
Not
Elementary school.
elementary, no, elementary.
Elementary school. Elementary school.
So most are K, kindergarten through 5th, about age 4.7. So I'm going to talk about what that means, through age 11, about. The next level of school is called middle school, and it's usually from 6th to 8th grade, and the ages are about 11 through 14. Sometimes this is called junior high. In the past, like when I was a child, we had K through 6 elementary, and then we had junior high 7, 8, 9, and then high school 10, 11, 12. But now what's more common is this, elementary, middle, high school. This is more common. But if you hear someone say junior high, it's usually either 6, 7, 8, sometimes only 7, 8, sometimes 7, 8, 9. Grade, 7th, 8th grade. Okay. And then the last level is high school, usually 9th to 12th grade, ages 14 to 18. Okay, I have a little star here next to TK, and this is called transitional kindergarten. So, right, they're transitioning from preschool to kindergarten. So, for many, many years in California, and again, this was different in all the states, so it was a little crazy when kids got to college. Some kids would start college, university, they'd be 17, some would be 18, some would be 19, because all the states had different registration deadlines for school. So for many, many years in California, it was December 2nd. So if your child was going to be 5 by December 2nd, they could start kindergarten in August, whenever school started, August or September, right? So my daughter's birthday is November 30th. So technically, she could start kindergarten when she's 4 years and 9 months old, right? So she's 4 years when she starts, August, September, October, November. Finally, she turns 5. She's the youngest kid in the class. So we didn't do that. Well, she actually did kindergarten twice. We did that. The first year, her preschool had a kindergarten class. So we were like, okay, she can do kindergarten here. And there were like 12 kids in her class. It was very lovely. And they all had a birthday between September and December, because all the parents were like, I don't know if I should put them in kindergarten. They're gonna be so young, blah, blah, blah. And then we made the decision to have her do kindergarten again in the public school so that she wouldn't be the very, very youngest kid. But it was always a hard decision. So you could make a choice at that point. Okay. Then other states were saying the deadline is September 1st or September 2nd. So your child has to be 5 before September 1st. That's usually about the beginning of school. Your child has to be 5 by September 1st to start kindergarten. The other states were doing that, and the private schools were doing that. So California was like, maybe let's move it back also. When you start school, you have to be 5. So they moved it back, And then all these parents were like, wait a second, kindergarten's free, preschool costs money. I want my kid to start when they're 4 years and 9 months. So they decided to create, and it wasn't just the parents, it was like teachers, educators. It's really hard. How do you pick that date? It's not like magic. It's not like, oh, it's my 5th birthday, I'm ready for kindergarten. There's no like magic in it, but they have to pick a date. So they pick the date, September 1st. Right now in California, you have to be September 1st to start kindergarten. But if your birthday is September 2nd through December 2nd, you're gonna be 5 before Christmas. You're gonna be 5 before New Year's. Then you can go to TK, transitional kindergarten, okay? So all the kids in TK, they're almost all the same age. They all have those birthdays in the fall, September, October, November. Okay, so to enter regular kindergarten, not TK. And the idea is that they're transitioning and then the next year they'll go to full kindergarten. I think also what happens is some of the teachers watch and some of those kids go from TK to 1st grade. Like if their maturity level and they feel like they're ready for it. Because the problem is at this age, it's not just about being smart. There's an emotional, right, and like a developmental. Like my daughter, she's very smart. She didn't start reading. One of the reasons we didn't put her in young, she wasn't reading. She didn't read till she was 6, right? Because we didn't like to push. We're not those parents that push. Like you're gonna love reading because you love it. Like you're gonna listen to stories and blah, blah, blah. But we're not pushing you to learn it early. So she didn't read till she was 6. So that was one reason. But she's very smart. So she's in 10th grade now. She could totally do 11th grade work. But like emotionally, she's young. You know, she tends to have friends who are younger. I remember she was in like 5th or 6th grade and she was like playing with her dolls, you know? And I was like, phew, I'm glad she's not in like 7th grade or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And she doesn't want to drive a car yet. Like, it's fine. I mean, it's just, each child is different. But I feel like we made the right decision. And now the state agrees with me. Now in California, she couldn't start kindergarten that young. So that's elementary school and middle school. And then high school is 9th through 12th grade. And if any of you have high school students, you've probably heard these words, right? So when a child is in 9th grade, the child is called a freshman or a 9th grader, right? So he's in 9th grade. And then to describe the person, you would say he's a 9th grader or he's a freshman. He's a freshman. So freshman, 2nd year is sophomore.
Sophomore.
So you don't pronounce the O, silent O. And
Sophomore.
so freshman,
Freshman.
sophomore,
Junior.
freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
Junior, senior.
Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
Junior, senior.
Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So you'll hear both. He's in, actually you'll hear 3 things. He's in 11th grade, in 11th grade. He's an 11th grader, or he's a junior. I would say this one is, it's okay, but it's the least common, right? Joy, you've had kids go through high school, right? It's the least common. So more common, he's in 11th grade, he's a junior. This is correct, he's an 11th grader, it's just not as common. More common. Both of them, he's in 11th grade, he's a junior. Okay, in high school, so elementary and middle school, there's not a lot of requirements. You know, it's usually kind of up to the teacher. Most kids pass. It doesn't really count. I guess if you're applying to private high schools, maybe your grades in middle school count. Maybe it matters. But for most kids going to public school, elementary, middle school, there's not a lot of pressure, stress in here. High school, though, your grades in high school determine, your grades in high school, some tests you take, your activities in high school, determine where you go, where you're accepted to college, okay? So high school can be stressful for kids, especially if they have like a tiger mom or tiger dad parent who pressures them all the time, right? So it's really important for parents to really, and my daughter's in 10th grade now, I'm trying to like not, you don't want to pressure,
Yeah.
but you also want them to think about it a little bit, So we were in New York this summer, and she'd already said that she loves Broadway musicals, right? She loves New York City. My brother-in-law lives there, so we were in New York right after 9th grade, and she was like, Mom, can I go to college here? And I was like, well, not right here on Broadway next to the theater, but yeah, there's colleges in New York. So when we were back visiting family this summer, I was like, I know it's super early, you're only gonna be a sophomore, but we're here in New York, do you wanna take a tour of 2 colleges? So we did, but I was like, there is no pressure. I have no feeling one way or another, but we're here, you mentioned New York City, we could go on a tour. And then I'm gonna go cry, I'm gonna go to New York City. Okay, we're ready now, right? So it's like, it's a balance, and I'm just saying this because I know some of you, Mia, your son is also 10th grade, and yours sophomore, 10th grade, yeah. It's like, you don't want to start doing you don't want to pressure, right? Because you don't want them to be stressed and miserable, and honestly, some kids they jump off a building and commit suicide because they're stressed. Like, you don't want that. You don't want that, right? But at the same time, you don't want them to be like, I'm playing my video game. I don't know. You got to balance it out. Okay, sorry. That's just in my head, and I know some of you are thinking about that. So grades count, and you have to take some specific courses, some requirements when you're in high school, and then you can take some electives. Electives are, well, actually, art is a requirement. You need 1 year of either music or dance or theater or art. And you need 2 years of a language, right? But let's say you did, you took Spanish in 9th grade and Spanish in 10th grade. For 11th and 12th grade, it would be an elective. It's no longer required, okay? So when people talk about college classes or high school classes, there's requirements and electives. So the electives, you usually need some number of electives to graduate, but they could be in anything. Whereas the requirements are usually like, you need 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, etc. Okay, and then for each course you take in high school, usually it's 5 credits. At least that's that's LA Unified. Joy, where does your son go?
Baltimore, John Hopkins.
No, your younger son.
LaSalle.
What's that? Oh, it's a private school.
Yeah.
In private schools, do they talk about credits or units?
I think so.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Mie, where's your son? What school?
Public.
But which district?
Arcadia.
Arcadia. So is it the same thing for each class? It's like 5 credits or 5 units, something like that. Yeah. I could ask Abby. San Gabriel High School.
No, Gabrielino.
Oh, but it's in San Gabriel?
Yeah, we have 2 schools. It's
sorry,
a tinier one.
Gabrielino High School. Each class is like 5, is it called units or credits in high school? Same.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think we use both. In college, it gets a little clearer. And it's usually per course, per semester. So fall semester math is 5 units, and then spring semester is 10. 5 more, you get 10, right? You just know, I have to take these classes, I graduate. High school. And I'm just telling you this because sometimes people need to go back when they're adults and get their high school degree. They need the units again, right? Okay. And you have kids. Once you finish high school, you move into what we call higher education or post-secondary education. So it means anything after high school. And this is most commonly, people refer to this as college. So I had a student from another semester visit me yesterday, and she said, my son wants to go to college, but my husband wants him to go to university. And that sentence made no sense to me, okay? Because Americans think of it as the same thing. We think of it as college. You're going to school, after you finish high school, it's college. It's like a general category. Where, I have 2 sons. Oh, where does he go to college? Oh, my daughter's in college. My kid left for college yesterday. Oh, look, there's a bunch of college students, right? So we use the word college to refer to any kind of school, to higher education. But this is confusing for people from other countries because for them, they usually use university, or it's very clear, university is this thing and college is this thing. It is not that clear in America, okay? And so when people say my son's in college, he could be at Harvard University, he could be at UC Berkeley, he could be at community college. You have no idea, okay? But it's more common. People don't say like, when I was in university, or when I was at I'll be British. When I was at university, I always studied very hard before I went to parties, right? Okay. So in Britain, they say at university or in university or whatever. It's all about university. We don't really use that word unless we're saying the name of a specific university, okay? And I learned something teaching this class, maybe a little bit before that. This is what I learned. The difference between college and university. Here it is. This is what I learned. Woohoo! The word university is only used officially for those institutions that have both undergrad and graduate programs. So undergrad means bachelor's and master's or professional. MD is medical law, professional law, medical, okay? So let's say Occidental College. Do you know Occidental College?
Yeah.
It's in Eagle Rock. Okay, it's a small private liberal arts college. Which famous president went to Occidental College? Barack Obama. So he came from Hawaii. I think he went to high school in Hawaii. He went to Occidental College. And it is a four-year college, but he decided to transfer to Columbia College, which is part of Columbia University in New York City, okay? But he did start at Occidental College, okay? Occidental College is a four-year college. It's a private nonprofit, okay? So you'll hear all these words, private. So mostly they don't say nonprofit, but almost all private colleges are nonprofit, almost all. Unless it says like Trump University, and then you don't want to go there. It's private, and it's for profit, meaning it's making money off you. And there's some others. There are some other for-profit universities. There's some of the healthcare are for-profit, and they're not all bad. But I'm always a little bit like, should people be making money off of education? Should we really have these private for-profit colleges and universities? I'm totally fine with private nonprofit because the money's going back into the school and education. But private for-profit for education and for healthcare, for me, is like, These are things that like the government and individuals, private foundations, that we should be doing for the public good, not for somebody to get rich. That's my personal opinion. Okay, so Occidental College is a private nonprofit. It's a very good school, but it's a college. So that means you can only get a bachelor's degree. You can't get a master's or a PhD or professional, right? UCLA is public, it's government, University of California, Los Angeles, and you can get, because it has the word university in it, you know that I must be able to get a master's or a PhD. University of Southern California is very tricky and confusing because it's a university, so it's got bachelor's and master's, and it sounds like it's public. Oh, Southern California. California is a state, but it's private. Anything that's just, pretty much anything that's just UC, University of California, University of California, Los Angeles, University of California, Irvine, University of California, Berkeley, San Diego, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz. There's 17 that start with UC. Those are all public. But if it's University of Southern California, no. Or University of San Diego, it's private, okay? It doesn't mean it's bad, it does mean it's more expensive, okay? But this is the main difference between officially a college and a university, is a university you can get a higher degree. So I said to this former student, I said, well, I would encourage you to let your son look at both colleges and universities, because there are many, many very good four-year colleges where you can get a bachelor's degree and then you can go somewhere else for your master's. Like, most people don't go to the same school for their bachelor's and their master's anyway. So it doesn't matter. And one of the advantages of a four-year college it's usually smaller, the number of students. Usually the total number of students is less than 5,000. So it means your class size is smaller. So it's like one professor and 15 students or 20 students. At the big universities, they have 30,000 students. Then the classrooms have 300 students, right? Not all of them, but it is a difference to think about. It is a difference to think about. And in the United States, there are many colleges that are just as prestigious as universities, okay? The universities, what they have to offer is, because they're bigger and they have graduate programs, they often have research opportunities. They have labs, right? They're connected with a hospital, or they're researching science or astronomy. So if you are going to be an undergrad, bachelor's degree, in some science, and you want more opportunities to get involved early in research, then maybe a university might be better. It depends on what you're studying. And some of the colleges have very good research labs too, but the better ones are probably at universities. Okay. So it's just complicated. It's hard when you move to a new country and you're trying to figure this out. Okay. So back up here to college. So there are about I just learned this when I was writing this, 4,500 colleges and universities in the US. That's a lot, okay? So that includes public and private, and most of the private are nonprofit. It includes what we call liberal arts colleges. So these are like 4-year, okay, BA, and community colleges, which are 2-year. And I have that down here. So the word college, even the word college can mean two very different things, right? It can mean a bachelor's degree or an associate degree. But almost always we would distinguish. She goes to community college. It's very different, 2 years. Okay. Most private colleges are nonprofit, a few are for-profit. Remember like the Trump University example? Usually if it's for-profit, it's newer, like past 20, 30 years. It doesn't have a long history. It's not as prestigious, pronunciation, prestigious. Prestigious means like high esteem, recognized, valued, right? Usually those the for-profit are not as valued. The public and the private nonprofit, they're both considered very good. Like if you looked at top 25 colleges in the United States, you would see probably Harvard, which includes Harvard College for undergrads, and then it includes the medical school and whatever, the whole university. Right, so Harvard University is going to be there, it's private. But you would also see University of Michigan, it's public. UCLA is public, right? So it's really a mix of public and private. Most Americans don't think it's better to go to public or it's better to go to private, meaning private nonprofit. There's no big difference in terms of like how we think of those schools. Okay. The public colleges are organized by each state. So the state of California has like 3 different systems. We have the community college system. Anybody know how many community colleges we have in California?
I have no idea.
110. Wow. 110 community colleges. And sometimes one of those community colleges might have like 4 or 5 different campuses. We have Colorado, Foothill, Rosemead, they're all pretty small, but like Los Angeles Community College District has 7 really different colleges. That's one of the big ones. But 110 colleges and then some branches. So community colleges are everywhere, right? Then we also have the universities. So those are the UC system, and there are about 17. And then we have what are called the Cal State, California State Universities. And generally, I don't know how many there are of those. So community colleges, there's about 110 locations in California, or colleges. And then the UCs, I think there's 17. Anyone know? You can look it up. How many Cal States there are? Abby, can you quickly Google?
Yes.
Number of, it's already 11:10. Number of Cal States, she's gonna tell us.
22.
But generally, these are considered the most prestigious, the hardest to get into generally, and then these, and then the community colleges.
It says there's 23 Cal States.
Okay, that sounds about right.
23.
And you want to check the UCs to see if I just like made that number up. So which of these is the most affordable, the cheapest, lowest cost?
Community
Colleges. And then in the middle, Cal State,
Cal
and then
State.
here. But these are still considered a bargain. Considered, they're much cheaper than the private schools. Okay.
It says there's 9.
Only 9 UCs?
Yeah, it says 9.
Maybe. I don't know, I could be wrong. Okay. All right. And then there's private. I don't know how many. Can you see if you can find that number of private college? It might not be right, but in California.
Stanford.
So this example would be, oh yeah, Occidental, Pomona,
Stanford.
Stanford,
Stanford.
University of San Diego, USC,
There's,
Loyola.
it says there's over 100
Okay, yeah,
independent colleges and universities.
that sounds right. Because this is the whole state of California. So there's some like way up there in Northern California, like driving for 14 hours, you're still trying to get there. Okay, but that gives you a little idea of how they're organized, right? But the biggest schools in terms of number of students, actually some of the community colleges, PCC I think has like 26,000 students, including you guys. So these tend to be bigger than the private ones. Okay. This is other important vocabulary, undergrad and graduate. So undergrad refers to first 4 years of post-secondary. So, and then, do I have it here? Did I take it away? I didn't, it's over here. So first year, second year, this is all undergrad. So it's the same words that we use for high school. So in high school, first year is freshman year, and college, your first year is freshman year. So when you have kids, you can say things like, my older son is a junior in college, my daughter is a sophomore in high school, and my younger son, so you've got 2 sons, that's why older, younger, daughter's not a son, and my younger son is in 8th grade. That's how you say it. Okay, so if someone says my son's a junior, they have to specify a junior in high school, or unless you're standing in the high school and you're talking, right? But in general, you have to specify. And you'll hear, so you just hear these words a lot, like they have a good undergrad or undergraduate program. Oh, I've heard their graduate program is really good, their grad school. I'm going to grad school. I'm applying to grad school. So you'll hear undergrad and you'll hear grad school, and these are often not abbreviated, but kind of shortened. She's a grad student. He's an undergrad, right? So Abby, at PCC, do people use the word undergrad that much? I mean, you are undergrads.
No, but I don't know, we just say
People, you know what it means. Do you use freshman and sophomore?
yeah, we use freshman and sophomore.
Or
Or we
first year,
just say
second.
the first year, second year.
First year, second year, yeah. I mean, and then some students that, Abby's one of the few people I know that's like gonna finish, and it's a 2-year school. A lot of people don't finish in 2 years. You have to be like really focused on top of it. Remember that expression, on top of it? You have to know when your priority registration is, because it's hard to get into the classes that you need sometimes. There's waiting lists. So Abby, what's the program you're in? Pathway?
It's called Pathways, but like it's not priority because like military is of course like the most prioritized.
Right. So if you're a veteran, if you served in the U.S. Navy or Army, then you get the top priority when you come back to school.
Like if you're a veteran, then you can apply first, and then Pathways is like the second.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, because there's like veterans and then DSPS.
Oh yeah, disabled students get priority. But if for your kids or for you, if you know, you want to finish quickly, getting into one of these programs like Pathways, what were the requirements?
You just have to follow.
You just sign up for it? Did you
yeah.
have to be like low income, go to a local high school.
No, that's for EOPS.
See, then there's another program. I don't even know what that means. Educational opportunity?
I'm not sure. It's for
We don't.
like, you know, if you're a foster
Oh yeah, foster kids.
kids.
So there's all these like programs, and it's always worth asking. You know, can I join that program? Sure, we have space. Come on in. Even if you're not low income or minority, or go to the local high school. Because if you're in a program within the university, they're going to provide you more counselors and more services and more information, etc. So you might actually finish in 2 years, but you also have to take 4 or 5 classes every semester. You have to take at least 1 class in the summer and the winter. You have to really
Yeah, I haven't had any breaks. Since
no
last
breaks,
summer. Nope.
no breaks. You know,
No breaks.
if you want to finish in 2 years. Okay, we gotta go because time is up. But will you guys read this tonight? 'Cause it's so interesting, and then you can ask me questions. This was a mistake. I didn't mean to print this. It was from, it's mostly you have it already, so don't worry about that. But do read this stuff, and we can talk a little bit more about it tomorrow. Also tomorrow, if you have questions about the pink packet, it's due